Construction and Development and Aging Services. This is project management PowerPoint presentation. This is not a project management class, so we will just briefly discuss some main themes. There are different types of construction contracts. The one that PRS uses most frequently is a guaranteed maximum price. This is a negotiated price that includes all aspects of the entire project. There's a certain limit that's set in terms of timeline and dollar amount. There are also clauses built in to account for weather delays and certain criteria that has to be met related to that. There are change orders, which are requests to make changes by either the owner or the contractor, and there are contingencies set up at the start of the contract to make allowances for inevitable change orders. The project that we'll be looking at is the Mirabella South Waterfront, or one of the projects that we'll be looking at. I think you're all familiar with this project by now. The original contract sum for the South Mirabella project was about $125 million. There were 6 change orders negotiated in the process, and that brought the GMP up to $126 million. This is the hole in the ground from whence the Mirabella Tower will rise. Here you see it on its way up. And here you see the winter before last when we were hit with a bunch of snow in Portland, which caused tremendous delays. This triggered the weather delay clause in the contract, accounting for so many days that could be delayed without penalty because of weather. There were other factors that occurred, unforeseen conditions that caused renegotiations. Basically, they drilled down and hit a power line that was not accounted for in the city plans. This knocked out power in the whole south waterfront area of Portland, and PRS wasn't very popular during that outage. Other kinds of factors that are very much dependent upon timing include things such as concrete pours. Here you see a picture of the day that 2,500 cubic yards of concrete was poured to make this slab. As you might imagine, if there's any sort of delay in this process, it causes all sorts of logistical havoc related to getting this project done. Local project, the Rogue Valley Manor, is another example of a fairly big project. This was a $35 million project, and I included it because you might be able to look up on the hill and see it. The Seattle Mirabella is another example of a project that we've talked about in here. The construction costs on the Seattle project were originally estimated about $149 million. There were 38 change orders that were submitted, and a revised contract amount came in at $157 million. Contingencies were set up in the beginning, about $1 million in contingencies, to make allowances for these change orders that did in fact occur. Here's the hole in the ground in Seattle, and the Seattle Mirabella rising up. This slide here shows construction workers, lots and lots of construction workers, and just gives you an idea of the scope of a project like this. It costs over $500,000 a day during the building process. So as you might imagine, people are pretty concerned about staying on track. There's another shot of the Seattle Mirabella being built. And here's the completed Seattle Mirabella in Seattle. So when we say completed, there's a term called substantial completed that's important to understand. Basically, substantial completion means that stage at which owners can come in and occupy the building for the purposes that it was intended to be used for. If there's a delay in the substantial completion date, there are penalties involved. In this particular case, that penalty was agreed to be $30,000 per day assessed to the contractor if they did not come in on time. On the other side of that coin, if they got the project done early, they would be bonused at $15,000 a day for every day early on the project. So change orders, just very briefly, it's a written instrument prepared by an architect, signed by the owner, the contractor, and the architect, stating that they all agree to a change from the original design, how much that change is going to be financially, and what that will do to the timeline. Here's an example of what a change order might look like. A few other projects to touch on real quick. Trinity Terrace down in Texas. Construction costs in that project were estimated at $34 million. There were 34 approved change orders, adding another $6 million to the project for a $40 million addition. And there were about $1 million in contingencies set up at the outset of the project. And here's a shot of Trinity Terrace and Trinity Terrace nearing completion. So for all our projects, all the PRS projects, senior-friendly design is important, and that means agreeing upon these design features from the outset as part of the GMP. And that includes everything from handles that are easily accessible and doors that make sense for older adults to different kinds of flooring and the other things that you can see in this list. So typically GMPs and project management and senior housing include all of the things on this menu of services. A couple things to point out from this menu or to clarify, delay claims might be related to unforeseen circumstance or weather. And again, that's negotiated on the front end, how many days are reasonable and what constitutes a reasonable rain or weather delay. And it's usually negotiated as a certain number of hours per day that cannot be worked. As you look down this list, you'll see abbreviation FF&E. FF&E stands for furnishings, fixtures, and equipment. There's usually an agreed upon timeline for when those will be installed. And you could take a look at the other things in this list. Last project we'll look at really quickly is about a $45 million project. You can see the before and after in these pictures. This project was highlighted simply because an unforeseen circumstance happened, and that was they found a old Native American burial ground, which certainly caused a dramatic delay in the project. We had to bring in archaeologists and others to take a look at this and decide whether to move it, resulting in multiple delays on the project, as you might imagine. And that's basically it for a very quick overview of project management and senior housing.